Hello and welcome to another episode of the Zero Five Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Abernathy. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to get your initial safety team, how to recruit people for your safety ministry. If you've been following our Substack or this podcast, we've been going over a series of how to build your safety ministry from scratch or how to take your safety team into a full-fledged ministry. And so by this point, hopefully, your church leadership has made the key decisions on how they want this team, how they want this ministry to run. They've decided that they're willing to invest in this becoming a ministry and not just a gun club. Hopefully, your church leadership has picked a leader, somebody that is willing and able and has the heart for turning safety and the protection of the congregation into a ministry. And then you've developed SOPs, you've developed your emergency response guidelines, you've gotten a rough sketch, a rough architectural plan of how you want this ministry to be built. And now it's time to actually bring the people into your ministry. When it comes to recruiting people in, there's always tons and tons of ways to do this. You can do announcements, you can do just word of mouth. It depends a lot on the size of your church, how large your congregation is, how big of a team you need for this ministry, and also how you set your ministry up. As you're looking for people, have your process in place. I've talked before about having an organized process and how having that organized process is what's going to keep quality people around. We had this issue when we first started my safety team. It was a very loosey-goosey process. There wasn't a lot of organization. There wasn't a lot of formality to it. And if somebody is going to raise their hand and volunteer to join a team in which they're being called upon by the church to potentially put their life on the line, they want to know that there's some organization, there's some backing, for lack of a better term, they want to know that the church's poop is in a group. And because I don't want to put my life on the line, I don't want to risk myself for having no backing. I don't want to put my life on the line and not know that I have people that have my back as well, or my family's backs. Something that you need to keep in mind is that having an organized process is very, very important. I always recommend starting out with a background check, an interview questionnaire so you can kind of get to know them a little bit, an actual interview. We want that interview to actually get a chance to see where their heart is. Why are they joining this ministry? You're going to get, I categorize people that get attracted to the safety ministry into three categories. You have the first category, and it's usually the most prevalent category, is you have what I call your wannabe heroes. And wannabe has a tendency to have a derogatory context to it. This isn't derogatory at all. These are people that something has happened at a church somewhere, or they realize they do have the heart to be a protector, and they're the ones, they want to raise their hands and put their lives on the line, and they want to protect their families, and they want to protect their congregation. The wannabe heroes are awesome. One issue that you could run into with your wannabe heroes that you need to be aware of as you bring them onto your ministry is the wannabe heroes operate many times off of motivation. I've written in a Substack about the difference between discipline and motivation, and that motivation comes and goes, peaks and valleys. Discipline stays. Discipline is what sticks around when the training isn't as fun and as ninja as they like it to be. It's doing the mundane training because it's necessary. It's showing up early, doing the mundane, boring checks pre-duty because that's what needs to be done. That's what discipline is. Motivation is something happens, I feel a call to go protect. I'm going to go protect. But then 2 weeks later, when it gets to be a little bit inconvenient, I'm not going to show up as much. Motivation is, it's Mother's Day, it's Christmas, it's Easter, it's a high potential threat day, so I'm going to sign up on that day. But during VBS, when I don't have young kids that are a part of VBS, no, I'm not gonna sign up for that. Or I've got a hunting trip or fishing trip coming up, and so I'm not gonna sign up because I've got this, even though the training was scheduled well in advance. That's what the wannabe hero is going to do. Again, nothing against the wannabe hero, but the wannabe hero is going to operate off of motivation. But here's the kicker. The first step towards discipline, it's motivation. And so if they are motivated to come and serve, you can work with that. You can develop discipline from that. If you're a safety ministry leader, or if you're a church leader helping build this safety ministry, just know you are going to have people that fit into the wannabe hero category, that they show up for a while and then they disappear. That's just going to happen. All right. But if you have a good organized process, you have regular training, you make the training interesting and applicable, not just applicable to the safety ministry and protecting the church, but applicable to how they can protect their family. You put those things in place, and you're going to develop discipline out of the motivation. So if you have a wannabe hero, if you have an influx of people that get interested in your ministry after something happens somewhere in the world, don't look down on that, because those are people that are potential very, very good contributors to your ministry. But that's one category that they're going to fit into. The other category of people that are going to be drawn to the safety ministry are the prior folks. That's your veterans. That's your prior first responders. A lot of times it's going to be your retirees, your retired veterans, your retired first responders. And in a conference with Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, I was talking with him, and I pointed out the fact that a lot of the guys in the room were a little bit past their prime. And he just he laughed, and he said, it's just a bunch of old sheepdogs trying to get a second run at it. And that's exactly what the safety ministry is it's folks that have that sheepdog mentality. They have that protector's heart, and maybe they're a little bit past their prime, but they still got fuel in the tank. They still got some grit to their bite, and they want a second run at it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I love having folks that have that prior experience. I love folks that they want to get that second run at it, because to them it's more than motivation. And if I have a tendency to say guys, that's just predominantly the safety ministry tends to be men. But women are an extremely valuable part of the safety ministry. And I'm going to talk about women in the safety ministry in this next category. But keep in mind, though, with your prior folks, your veterans, your first responders, there may be a tendency for those folks to know it all. They may have a little bit of an ego because I already have this training. I went through this training 20 years ago. I did this, I did that, and that's fine. The experience is very, very valuable. But if you did it 20 years ago, it's not exactly current. I could tell you firsthand, CPR changes every 5 years or so. Tactics change considerably as time goes on, and as we become involved in all these conflicts, tactics change a lot. The threat picture changes a lot, and so how you recognize threats. Back in the early 2000s, in late 90s, early 2000s, what was an imminent sign of a potential threat? It was a young person in a trench coat, and that's because of Columbine. Well, now, like, kids wear trench coat, kids wear hoodies in the middle of summer in Texas all the time. That's the style, right? So the times change, and so if you have somebody that they're prior, and they have that mentality of, oh, been there, done that, have the experience, have the training, did it 20 years ago, I don't need to do it again, that should be a little bit of a red flag, because 1, 20 years ago is not today. 2, if you're not going to train, we don't truly know how you're going to react in a situation because we haven't trained with you. And that's not a good thing. If you have people that are not showing up to team training, how is your team going to have faith in each other if they haven't worked together? And so if you have a prior guy, or you have somebody, even a wannabe hero, if you have anybody that's not showing up to training on a regular basis, there's no telling how dependable they are. And by their record of attendance, dependability is not high. And that can be an issue. That could be that's a whole other podcast episode on dealing with that. Your third category, and this is the category that I love. I call them the misfit toys. These are the folks that just don't belong in any other ministry. They don't have the skill sets or the temperament or the mentality that fits in with your stereotypical church ministries. They don't play instruments. They don't sing. They don't know how to run sound. They don't have enough patience to deal with kids. They're not personable enough to be a greeter, but they do have a heart to serve. And maybe they have the heart of a protector. And so you combine this desire to serve with even just a little bit of a sheepdog mentality, a sheepdog's heart. And you have the potential for somebody that could be one of your most disciplined and motivated safety team members. I have a couple of females on my team that fit that category to a T, that they've dabbled in other ministries and it just doesn't speak to their heart. It just doesn't truly fulfill them. So they join the safety ministry, and they're like clockwork. I can guarantee you they're going to be at almost every training that I have scheduled. And not only are they going to be at almost every training, but they're going to be really pissed off if they can't make it to a training, and they're going to be the first one to raise their hand, and I'll try that scenario, or I'll try that, or I'll get hands on. And that's awesome. And that's not just ladies, that's guys on my team. And let's be honest, the church really doesn't have a whole lot of ministry opportunities for men. There's the men's ministry. That's usually about it in most churches. But there's not a lot of opportunities for men to serve in masculine type roles. And so the safety ministry is really a great opportunity to bring men in to get involved. I've got a handful of guys on my team that have spent 20 plus years at this church being back row Baptists, being drugged to church by their wives because that's just what families should do. And it's not that they're bad Christians, they're awesome Christian men, but church doesn't always speak to men very well. That's just how it is. It's sitting in a pew or a chair, singing songs and listen to somebody preach. That doesn't always speak. It doesn't always speak to me. I was one of those guys. I didn't fit in well with other ministries, but I had a heart to serve. I knew that was something that Christ had called me to do. I had a particular skill set. I had a particular experience base, and fortunately, I belonged to a church that saw the need and saw the ministry potential of a safety ministry. And this has become my home. This has become my home ministry. This motivates me to come to church to protect our people. And this is, and by default, I get fed the word. I get to experience worship in a way that I've never experienced it before. You're going to have a lot of folks that want to join your safety ministry that, very similar to me, worship music doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't. I get nothing out of worship music. In fact, a lot of times I think to myself, like, man, if I was an unbeliever and I didn't know the background to these lyrics, I would think these people are sick. Washed by the blood of the Lamb. Like, if you don't know what that means, if you don't know the background behind that, it sounds kind of gross. And that's just how worship music has always been to me. But for me, for other members in our ministry, on our team, I'll tell you what has been worship for them, what has become worship for them. It is standing on guard and looking around the worship center as people have their eyes closed and their heads up to the sky and their hands up, and they're worshiping, and there is zero worry, and there is zero concern, and there is zero apprehension. And so they are able to get something out of that worship. They're able to feel and hear the Holy Spirit talk to them. They are able to be fed God's word without distraction because I'm there, and because my team members are there. And for me, that is worship. That is how I give back. That's how I experience God's presence, is knowing that I am a part of his body worshiping. I'm a part of it. I'm not sitting in the back with my hands in my pockets or my arms crossed, looking around at people like, I don't get it. I don't get it. No, I'm looking at people and be like, I'm helping with this. This is pretty cool. That's where this is a ministry. And that's where your misfit toys fit in. And so when you have people that join that don't fit in with other ministries, man, the safety ministry is that place for them. And it has a powerful potential. It really does. But those are the main categories of people that you're likely going to get that get drawn to the safety ministry. And so start to recognize what type of person, what type of category they fit into during your interview process. Get to know them as you interview them. Get to know their heart, because the heart is what matters. Training and background and experience are great. They're fantastic, especially if they have the heart to relay and to pass on that information and that experience to other people. But if that experience and that background is driving an application to be on the ministry because it's going to inflate their ego, it's going to give them the chance to show, I know all these things, I'm a ninja at this stuff. Or if they're a wannabe hero and they're joining the ministry, and what's really driving them is the potential authority of having a quote unquote a badge and a gun, that's not the people that you want in this ministry. Those should be red flags. The people that this ministry requires have to have a servant's heart. They have to have a desire to protect, a desire to serve the body of Christ. Yes, they will benefit from being a part of this ministry. They will benefit in learning new skills, in polishing up old skills. They will benefit in gaining new knowledge that protects them and their families. Yes, they will gain out of that. But they need to be just as much a contributor as they are a consumer. If the ministry is giving to them more than they are giving to the ministry, that's a problem, right? Because that's not what we're called to do. We're called as Christians to be contributors to the body of Christ, and not just consumers. So as you bring people in, keep an eye for that in your interview. As you put out your initial announcements, if you're starting your team from scratch and you're doing these interviews, there's really not a lot of people I would turn away. There really isn't. In the safety ministry, it being a ministry, we can always find a place for people. And so get your interviewees, get them together and start training. Have your initial group and immediately start training. Start with your basics that can at least put you out in operations, that can get you started standing on watch. You're not going to be super squared away, but at least you have people on watch. Presence by itself is a great detractor to potential threats. So let's get some basic training out of the way, and let's start operating. So I usually recommend CPR, first aid, and stop the bleed training immediately. Start going over your emergency response guidelines or your standard operating guidelines and your SOPs. So that way people understand how the ministry is going to run, where the positions are, what each position does, how to communicate. Those basic operational things, start working on that. Is it going to be smooth immediately? Nope, absolutely not. It's going to be very clunky. That's fine. There's always going to be growing pains. You're going to learn as you go. There's going to be a lot of on-the-job training with this. But what you'll notice is you will probably start out with a group that's this big, and after a couple of months, it's going to pare down. As it pares down, you're going to develop your initial core group. This initial core group is going to be your backbone. I have 8 or 9 members on my team out of 30 right now that have been with the team since day one. They have formed the backbone of this ministry. Without them, this ministry flails. With them, this ministry thrives. They have become my best recruiters. They have become my best mentors for me as a leader, but also for new people coming onto the team. They have been with the team from start until now. They have seen how the team evolved, and they're able to relay to new people, hey, this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. There's some work up front, but you'll love it once you get going. And so develop that initial core and start going from there. The qualification process, you're not going to be able to do a full tilt qualification process for your new people. You're not going to have time for that. You need to get people on watch. That needs to happen because I hate using this phrase. I really do, but it's not if, it's when. Okay, we have to be prepared at all times. And so once we can get the initial training for that initial group, let's start operating, they are qualified. Okay, use your LTC. If they have an LTC or a CHL, that's the initial qualification for the first group. For them to be able to carry on duty, that's going to be the requirement because you don't have the time to do the training yet or to go through an entire qualification process. Otherwise, you may find yourself with only 1 or 2 true gunfighters. And we need to have more guns in the field. The LTC, the CHL, that at least is a process. It's a documented process that now covers you and your church that says this person has met a bare set of qualifications in accordance with the state. That has to be a requirement for anybody that carries on your team. Even if your state has constitutional carry or unlicensed carry, require a license so that way they have that bare bones documented qualification. Then, as we have our core group and we're operating and we're getting lessons learned from maybe smaller incidents or just working together, we've pared down the people that were motivated, motivation waned, and they dropped off. And we have that backbone. From there, anybody new that comes in goes through a full qualification process. Have that qualification process in place. For my team, our qualification process takes a year. Unless you have prior experience. If you're coming fresh off the street with no experience, no applicable experience, it takes a year. We do mandatory training every quarter, and that each mandatory training checks a box of skill sets that need to be refreshed regularly. So that's your CPR, first aid, stop the bleed. That is your firearms qualification. That is your threat recognition and ministry-based de-escalation. And then it's scenario-based emergency response guideline practice. Those are our 4 trainings done throughout the year. And so for a person to become qualified to be on the team, they have to have gone through all 4 trainings. They have to have shadowed a shift in every position that we have. And then they sit for a qualification board. And that qualification board is kind of an interview and a tryout where we get to see how much of what they've learned has stuck. Do they need to work on more stuff? And is the heart really there? What that year-long process has done for us is it has weeded out the wannabe heroes that were operating purely off of motivation. It has highlighted the people that have the discipline to train regularly. And so that's been a huge boon for our team, is having that year-long process. Once they become a qualified member, then they can work towards becoming a qualified armed team member. And that's a whole other process that I'll probably do another video on. I have done a Substack on it. It's called Firearms Qualification for Safety Teams, if you want to look it up. But I'll do another podcast episode on how exactly we qualify our firearms team members. But once the ball's rolling, then it's just a matter of make adjustments as necessary, refine your processes, and keep the ball rolling and start grooming your next generation. That's the other thing, is if you want a thriving ministry, you have to groom your next generation, groom your next generation leader, groom your next generation of safety team members. And with this grooming of the next generation, with this qualification process, what all this has done is, in the establishment of this ministry, we have truly created a ministry. There's mentorship. There's opportunities for discipleship. There's one of the things that I have on my team that I also recommend is, you may have folks that are past their prime that still want to be a part of the ministry. Maybe they're not the best to be a first responder. Maybe they're not in the best physical condition to be a first responder, but I can train anybody to look for a don't look right, a DLR, spot it, and report it. I could train anybody to do that. And then I can find a place that's advantageous to have you spotting don't look rights and reporting them. All right, you don't have to be super physically capable. You don't have to be an Adonis. You don't have to be a ninja with a firearm. I have a bunch of team members that don't carry. There's some tactical advantage in having team members that carry and team members that don't, because nobody knows who's who except for my team. And so don't make carrying an absolute requirement. Unless your church is very, very small and your pool of people is very, very small, then you might have to. But if you're a mid-size to larger church and you have somebody that, is in full retirement and they need a place to belong, and they're teachable, find a place for them. Find a place for them. So very, very rarely will I say no to anybody wanting to join our team. Definite no's are bad background checks, and I mean bad, or their heart is in the absolute wrong place, and I discover that typically in the interview. If I discover somebody that's heart is not in the right place, I'm going to tell them to examine it. I'm going to be very upfront with them. Hey, you need to examine your heart and why you want to do this, and then come back. But as we bring in our experienced adults, as we bring in young people for the next generation, we develop opportunities for mentorship. We develop opportunities for discipleship. And this is all like-minded people. It's your people within those three categories, right? That get attracted to the safety ministry, that don't necessarily get attracted to other ministries. And so now you are ministering, you are discipling and mentoring people in your church that otherwise may not have been discipled or mentored. Right? And that's exactly what we want as the church. We want to reach as many people. We want to spread the gospel and disciple as many people as possible. This is more than a mile wide, inch deep type ministry. We can go very deep because a lot of personal relationships get developed in this ministry. A lot of community gets developed in this ministry. Training is the safety ministry's version of a fellowship gathering. It's a blast. We have a lot of fun with it. We learn a lot. We see each other's strengths. We see each other's weaknesses. We see each other's vulnerabilities. That's what ministry is all about. And that's what you create when you create a safety ministry. Security is the byproduct of the ministry. Security is a secondary but important byproduct of what you create with this. You create a ministry which fulfills all the needs of any other ministry for a very particular group that doesn't fit in anywhere else. And it makes your church safer as a whole. And so as you're building this ministry, as you're bringing the people in, have your processes, have an eye towards the fact that this is a ministry that we're building, not just a security team, and start bringing people in. And most importantly, keep an eye on the heart of the people that you're bringing in. Don't bring in any toxicity. Don't bring in, I don't care if they're former SEAL Team 6, if they're former CAG. If they got an ego that can't fit into the room, they're probably not going to fit into the ministry. And that's a person where you have to kind of check them a little bit, like, hey, I need you to examine your heart and come back. All right, but if I have somebody that has zero experience and they come in and they're just on fire. They're like, you know what? I see that the world's a dark place. I see that I'm able-bodied. I don't really fit in anywhere else, but I would love to learn. And I just feel like people need to be protected, and I'm the one to do it. If that's the type of answers you're getting in an interview, we can work with that. We can mold that into exactly what we want, both as a Christian and both as a responder. All right, so build your ministry, bring your people in, get that backbone, and start training. Because at the end of the day, we're here to glorify Him. We're here to protect His people and give Him the glory. So thanks again for joining me. Again, please support us. If you want to support this podcast, go to 05 Safety Training on Substack. One of the best ways you can support us is to become a paid subscriber. Like, comment, share. Please help us grow this ministry. Also, we are in the process of a Give, Send, Go fundraiser campaign to try and raise money to be able to buy force-on-force training equipment, to be able to make this top-tier training that military and police use to build their response capabilities. We're trying to make this available and affordable to church safety ministries. Right now, it's very hard to come by, and it's extremely expensive. Myself and the instructors that are part of 05, we've jumped through all the hoops to become certified instructors in force-on-force. We just need to buy the equipment, and it's expensive. So any way you could help would be tremendously, tremendously appreciated, not just by us, but by all the churches that we're able to train, that are able to now afford that training because of your help. So the link to the Substack, the link to the Give, Send, Go will be in the show notes. Please consider donating. Please consider supporting us. Thanks again, and go out there, protect His people, and give Him the glory. We'll see you next time.